Hi everyone, welcome to Cloudera Demos. My name is Shailesh Shavalkar. I'm a software engineer with the Replication Manager team at Cloudera. Today we are going to look at on-prem to COD HBase replication. This will replicate the HBase tables from on-premise clusters to the Cloudera operational database COD instance, which is running in our CDP public cloud. Now here, if you see, we have a bunch of tables. Few ones starting with 1 gig, few of them 10 gig and including 100 GB table, which we'll use basically in the scope of our replication. Let's look at the corresponding storage associated with these tables. We see, the tables are indeed like a gig in the size, along with like the 100 gig as we have seen them from the data set. Let's look at our destination environment. So here we have a Cloudera CDP public cloud, which has a couple of COD instances. So looking at the number of tables, it just has 2 tables. And if we take a closer look at the Cloudera operational database and the cloud storage, we actually find out which exactly is S3 bucket, which is used to provision here, the same 2 tables which are also visible in the via HBase shell. So this is a Replication Manager instance, which is running in our CDP public cloud. We have already registered the source cluster as a classic cluster. We also have these Cloudera operational databases visible in under clusters. When we create a HBase policy, I will name this HBase demo 1. Let's select our source cluster, which is on-prem cluster. And here if we check, so one part which this highlights is cloud credentials. What this really means is, in this case, the on-prem cluster also needs to have an external account set up, which has the ability to talk to the cloud storage, which is used by the Cloudera operational database. Let's take a look at the on-prem cluster. If you look at administration and external accounts, we do already have a access key, secret key based cloud external account, which is already set up on this on-prem cluster. This is the account which is used by Replication Manager app, so that now your on-prem cluster can access and write to the cloud storage, which is used by your Cloudera operational database. We find the same cloud credentials. And here at this point, we just need to enter few tables. These are the 2 tables which are present on source, and that's what we're using. And the important point to note here is we are also performing initial snapshot replication. What this means is the data sets which are present on the source cluster prior to replication is being enabled, is in that case exported from the source and imported into the operational database. This ensures that all the legacy data from these tables is carried over as the Replication Manager app sets up a continuous replication from the on-prem HBase to Cloudera operational database. Let's select our destination is COD1. At this point, if you see, there are a bunch of out-of-band steps which we have asked admin to perform. In this case, prior for this demo, we have made sure that we have actually performed those out-of-band steps. And this explicitly, the point to notice is it prompts the user to restart the HBase service, as this is something which admin has to do explicitly. Since this is an on-premise cluster, Replication Manager app does not perform this step automatically, but we, in fact, require admin to do this on its behalf. So we'll skip the step of doing the rolling restart of the destination. And the last point to notice is the Replication Manager app will automatically set up an internal user, which is in that case authorized to make sure that the HBase service from on-prem is authorized to talk to HBase service on the destination. This ensures that your HBase to HBase replication is secure and it's controlled only via this specific user and not across any other systems. I will just increase the number of map slots so that we can actually have this job go a little faster. Let's create the policy. We notice that the policy creation is successful. Let's wait for Replication Manager app so that we can actually drill down into more details of this policy. If you see, it is giving you detailed steps as what is currently happening. It's going over some of the important steps. It's running through cluster setup, and that is in progress. And we also have overall state of the policy and its status as the policy makes further progress. At this point, what will happen is the policy will go into a waiting state, and it will prompt us to restart the service on the source cluster. So let's take a look at the source cluster and see where things are. Yeah, we see a staleness against the HBase service. There are certain client configs which have to be deployed. These are the changes caused by the replication manager for the first time policy creation. Basically, it's waiting for manual restart of the service. It is currently in the waiting state. So let's go ahead and restart the service on source and destination and make sure that system is correct at this point of time. Going to the source, we have a staleness. The configs are appropriately informed as what are the configs which it has added. And once we restart these stale services, we can go ahead with the policy creation. So restart now. And the service restart is done. At this point, let's continue. Let's take a look at our destination. And that's also done. So yeah, both source and destination, we have updated and restarted the stale services. It actually has prompted you an option saying waiting for continue setup. And this is the option which is available here for the specific policy. So let's continue the setup. And as you continue the setup, the policy updates correctly. If you click now, you would see next level of steps and jobs which are being performed by the specific policy. What I specific mean is at this point now the tables which were specified when we created the policy for the very first time, the replication manager will orchestrate the step to export the snapshots for those tables from the source cluster and then importing those into the destination COD cluster so that all your initial data set, which was present prior to the replication, is also available on the destination COD. So yeah, here if you see the status is indicated, it says that the setup is in progress. And when you click at the details, you will see that there are next levels. For example, at this point, it's now creating a schedule. We'll start seeing a quite detailed low-level view of what exactly are the commands which it is showing and how things are proceeding further. So it created a bunch of other steps. The UI actually executed them. Now it's executing more steps, as in creating the snapshots on the source, exporting those snapshots on destination, and making sure that those snapshots are now available on the destination. So we are currently in the process of creating the snapshots. It has initialized the command, so it's running the remote snapshot command. And finally, it's going to clone the command on destination, along with basically making sure that the local snapshot which is created on source gets deleted. So Replication Manager app gives you a quite detailed view of all the steps which are involved during a policy creation. And it has taken the burden away from the administrator to make sure that they have to coordinate this workflow, have to enable, disable a bunch of steps on each side, and has fully automated this entire workflow end to end. So let's wait for some of the progress which Replication Manager app is making at this point. And here, if you want to even take a detailed look, you can see that the snapshot execution command is currently going on, which is indeed creating the snapshot on the source cluster. So if you go to the source cluster and you see, the source cluster indeed is in this case spending time to actually create the snapshots. This step is very much dependent on the data sets which you will have on the source at this point. And it's a function of how much data do you have and what is the size which it needs to transfer from source to destination. Yeah, the remote command completed. It's actually on to the next steps where it's cloning the snapshots on destination. And then finally, it will delete the snapshot from the destination cluster. So taking a further look, it has basically cloned the snapshots. It found this particular table which we are replicating to the destination. And let's wait for these commands to complete so that we can indeed start seeing the tables on the destination. It cleaned up the local snapshot which it created on the source cluster. I'm ensuring that, hey, that snapshot is not present on the source anymore. So at this point, it finished the execution of snapshot export and is restoring for a single table. And since we specified a couple of tables in this policy, it will repeat the same steps on each of those. As the Replication Manager app makes further progress, it will give you a detailed indicator if the policy has indeed completed or not. Given that we saw that it was successfully able to create the snapshots on source, export them, clone them on destination, let's take a look at the destination HBase shell and see if we actually see the tables on destination at this point. So coming to destination, and I'm just going to run the previous list command. And here, if you see, we did see the two tables which we had in the scope of replication, and they are now present, even though Replication Manager app is still doing some more bookkeeping exercise. Let's take a look at also the AWS storage and see if we now see storage behind the scenes for these two tables. And refreshing our AWS console view, we do see, in this case, the storage which is used by the corresponding two tables directly in the S3 bucket. Let's wait for the Replication Manager to complete all the steps. And at this point, we notice that the Replication Manager has completed all the steps which are involved in setting up this policy. And at this point, we are good to make sure that we can check the contents on the source and make sure that those same contents are available on destination. So it's still indicating that the setup is in progress, but it will complete as soon as the final progress. The create schedule gets updated, which it just did. And overall, this particular process took 6 minutes for two tables of 1 gig each in size. So going back to the contents, let's verify that we have the same data on both source and destination. On source, if I just run a simple command, it gives me the contents which are currently based on the data sets, but I can see the column family field 0, 1, 2, 3, and the various timestamps. And if you have a script which is making sure that we can compare the two, we would indeed see the same data sets present on both sides, right? So the exact same contents are present on both source and destination. Let's make sure that we show the difference between first-time policy creation and subsequent policy creations, because as we noticed, Replication Manager did a bunch of bookkeeping tasks, setting up service, basically users, and we're using machine users, doing some service restarts. Those are all one-time activities. Those are not something which Replication Manager has to repeat for further policy creations. So once admin has actually paid dues to perform those steps, Replication Manager, in that case, automatically will make sure that now it can replicate any subsequent tables which are part of the basic policy, which are part of the policy from source to destination. So let's create additional replication policy. Policy, I'll call this HBase, name this HBase demo 2. Select Linux On-prem. In this case, using the same cloud credentials that we had in the table name. So what I am doing is, just for the sake of showing incremental replication, I'm using a small table, which we can clearly articulate, add some data post replication, and then notice also point in time continuous replication so that the new data shows up for destination. So this is a table EMP, perform initial snapshot. Next, and here, let's create this policy. And this should almost go quite quickly in the jiffy. So coming to HBase demo 2, it shows setup in progress. Looking at further details, it's directly creating the schedules. It did not go through all the initial hurdle of steps where the admin had to restart services on both sides. And as we see the details of this create schedule, we should be able to basically see directly the data of the table on the destination. And at that point in time, we'll also perform some inserts on source to make sure that it also showcases the continuous nature of the HBase replication, which is as the data lands in source, HBase pushes these wall records from source to destination almost in a real-time manner, and the data gets available to the destination. So yeah, let's wait for the details of create schedule. We see, it is already performing a bunch of these steps. So as soon as all these steps are performed from the replication policy creation, the data should be available from source to destination. So let's take a look at some of the contents there and see what can we expect. So going to the source, if we do scan MP, so we have like a couple of records with some more user readable entries. So if someone is interested, Replication Manager indeed gives you a very detailed view of step by step as what is exactly trying to do on source, what it's trying to do on destination, and what are the commands which it is executing on either sides. So it has a pretty nice detailed view of all the steps which are being performed behind the scenes, right? So we are at the step where we are finally exporting the table snapshot from source and getting it into the Cloudera operational database with this COD instance. As soon as that step completes, the data should be available in the destination COD cluster. Admin can actually use the table on the COD itself. So the local snapshot creation is performed. It is exporting the snapshot from source to destination. And once the snapshot is cloned, we will clean up the snapshot from the source HBase service. The clone snapshot step is performed. So at this point, the table should indeed be present on the destination. So let's take a look at it. We see the employee table present here. Let's look at the contents of it. And it has the same two rows which are there. So let's wait for policy to finish all the steps. And then after this, we can actually perform some inserts on the source and see the almost near real-time nature of the HBase replication, which will replicate this data from the on-prem cluster to the COD cluster as well. Right. And it's done. So let's go ahead and add some data on source. So this is one. Let's do a scan. So we have 4 rows. And let's take a look at the destination. So here, if you do scan, it's still 2 rows. So hopefully the point-in-time replication shows up quickly and we should see the data on the destination. The third row did show up, which means the walls which were actually inserted did get replicated. And if we say wait for a few more seconds, hopefully the last row should also show up. So at this point, if you see, both the third row and the fourth row which we just inserted showed up on the destination. So this is where HBase realized new wall entries were added in the source. And since the replication was unable for this particular table, it actually shipped those wall entries to the operational database running in public cloud. And it was successfully able to replicate those two destinations. So let me take a pause and go back to the scope of demo again. So what we showcased in this demo was from on-prem to COD public cloud replication. It involved creating the very first policy, which has some admin intervention required from the admin to perform some out-of-band steps like service restarts. But once that policy gets successfully created, data gets replicated, those tables are now set for continuous point-in-time replication. We additionally created another policy to show that the overhead is there only for the first policy and not for the subsequent policies. And also, finally, we saw that once the replication has been set up correctly, the continuous replication now is enabled for all the HBase tables which are present on source, for which the replication has been enabled. So any changes which are made on the source HBase table would be reflected in almost pretty low RPO manner on the destination COD cluster. So with that, my demo of on-prem to COD public cloud replication ends. Thank you very much.